All right, hey guys, welcome to the show. Today I'm joined by Dan Gunsberg, co-founder of Hxro Network. Welcome, man. Thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, so before we dive too deep into things, could you just give us a quick background story on yourself and why you're building Hxro Network?
Absolutely. So my background has been really as a proprietary derivatives trader. I started on the floor of the Chicago Board of Trade, got about 25 years ago now, even longer actually, now that I think about it. And was down there for several years, very early to electronic trading, primarily traded in short-term interest rate products for most of my career. In 2015, got into crypto, and had a and at the time when I got into crypto, I was actually the chief operating officer at a large proprietary trading firm. Had multiple years really involved with centralized exchanges and exchange operations, and and kind of also from the obviously from the trader side, being from the prop firm. And that's basically how I got here, got in and got kind of into the trading side of things of crypto. And very simply put, Hxro Network, what we're building is really just it's a decentralized liquidity and risk primitive to support on-chain derivatives, and most specifically for vanilla and other exotic options. And kind of the connecting bridge, like, think about it. I kind of like to think about if you had like Globex, which is really like the kind of the centrifuge, like the matching engine for the CME, and kind of all the things about it that make that can make the CME a very robust, deep marketplace. Hxro Network is one critical component, kind of that liquidity and risk piece that Globex really offers, but also in a permissionless, disintermediated way, and being done fully on chain.
Yeah, that's really cool. Looking back at some of the people you worked with, in TradFi, are most of those people trading any crypto nowadays, or are they still stuck in TradFi?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think a lot of them, first of all, the answer is many of them are starting to cross over. And, fortunately, a lot of the big firms that I had interactions with during my TradFi days, have now started actually to join the project, or have been, kind of a part of Hxro for the last couple of years in some way. And it's been really amazing to kind of see everybody come together, and kind of us really moving more into this position of like coordination of these market participants, and and kind of getting everybody around the network, and getting them starting to build towards the things that the same friction points that I've seen exist in in TradFi that I think can be solved. They see them too very clearly, and a lot of them are still kind of living that to this very day. And and so
Nice.
it's like more and more every day they're crossing over. And I think and really what we're designing with Hxro Network is really designed to offer what will end up being something that feels somewhat familiar to them, by way of when you kind of think about in options or kind of other derivatives markets, like there's certain things that you kind of need that are just kind of basic functions to those markets. Like if it's futures, like you really need a futures curve, like you need duration. It can't just be like one expiration. Or if it's options, like you really need a chain of options with duration, things like that. And so we're really focused on solving some of those problems around how you build that on chain, and and then composing that with other components of the Solana ecosystem, and then building up, allowing it so anybody effectively can come and create a market on through the network, and offer that market through various outlets.
Yeah, that's cool. So do you think that your background in traditional finance has helped you out with building Hxro Network? You think it'd be possible if you didn't have that experience beforehand?
I mean, I think it would be very, very difficult. I don't think there's any way we would be able to execute or even begin to like think about or work on the solves for,
Mhm.
for a decentralized derivative protocol without the experience of, without having really kind of that deep domain expertise from traditional, from traditional derivatives markets. And even more so it's again, it's not just about us, it's really about the coordination of efforts of others.
Mhm.
And it's really been amazing to kind of see again, like the groups that have kind of rallied around this and come together. And it's so funny because like you also in traditional finance, and I talk about this a lot, like you have two large proprietary trading firms, right? And like they're not public. These are very private
Mhm.
entities. These are private. Like you go to their offices, like you are not getting up to their trading floors, like
Yeah.
major security involved, the whole bit, right? And it's very competitive. It's very secretive, and coming into this into kind of into a decentralized world, you really everybody is kind of rallying around like the common things that they all need to have the market, to have a decentralized market function correctly.
Mhm.
And it's amazing to see that like a couple years ago you'd never have like CTC and Jump and the
Mhm.
Susquehannas of the world kind of like come together and work together to actually work on problems to solve that ultimately will benefit them, but also benefit kind of the general fabric of the entire kind of this corner of the financial market system.
Yeah, I love that. And it's really cool to see, like you said, all these TradFi people coming together to work on one central kind of goal. Um,
Yeah,
so
really. I mean, you
yeah.
kind of saw it like with Pith too, right? Like
Mhm.
Pith was a great kind of lead example of that with kind of this like this common thing that everybody could, that these market participants could all publish to, that isn't something that kind of infringes on necessarily on like intellectual property or trade secrets. And it's very similar here in many ways. And there's so many unique problems that are very specific to to solving for kind of decentralized derivative protocols, like what I would say properly. Um, and these are all the right people to do it. And you kind of have to find these pieces and kind of that all sit at the center in the same way that like a large exchange, centralized exchange, sits at the center of all their businesses, right? They're
Mhm.
all meeting at these marketplaces. And so it's kind of like a restructuring and rethinking of how all of that works. And it's really special to see.
Yeah, definitely. So do you mind telling us about the DeFi derivative space right now? Like, what does the competitive landscape look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that I would say is that it's although to all of us that have been in crypto for a long time, it may not feel early, like because you've seen this stuff for the last the
Mhm.
last few years now, but it's so early. Like it's so early when you even think about like the total notional value that gets traded in these markets. It's just it's pretty much pales in comparison to like what's going on in traditional finance and like the actual capital that's there. But I would say that the competitive landscape is very interesting. For Hxro Network, like again, it's like we really, I think we're really kind of the first real protocol or project that has a considerable amount, like layers of domain expertise from traditional markets. And you know I think a lot of what we've seen has been which I think is really cool, is you kind of have these engineering teams that maybe one of them had some type of you know somewhat limited experience in traditional markets, but um, maybe they were a trader, who knows, and but have kind of taken their own spin on how to build an options product. And I think a lot of what you see today really ends up being some form of like almost like a perpetual swap in a way, even though there's like maybe some nonlinear optionality to it, or something. But it's really like these little kernels that are just being planted, that I think over time, you're gonna, especially as more and more traditional finance players start to cross over and get involved, and then once they can start committing, they start committing more resources to it, you'll start to see these, these things evolve. And I do think that the competitive landscape, like, although right now it feels very greenfield, like there is going to be competition in coming years that will be very much analogous to like how it looks like in TradFi, which is very competitive. So I think, but I think right now is like it, like everything in crypto, it's just, this is a great time for people to be experimenting. I think that I think that Hxro Network is taking much more of like a holistic approach, or like a kind of looking at things at the larger picture, mostly because we can, like, I was in traditional finance for 20 years before I got into crypto. So I have a pretty good purview of like, what exists there. I've been very deep both on the, on the trade side, on the operation side, on the regulatory side, and kind of know where the potential obstacles exist, and like, and kind of really asking the questions of like, how can we solve these? And then again, coordinating the right, the right teams to come in and to work on solving them. And so I think, I think it's a really interesting time. And I do, I do think that DeFi derivatives has not really like seen its day in the sun yet, like much in the way that kind of how it went from like, V1 DeFi was very much about like borrow lend. And then like V2 kind of really has been, a little more like NFT related. And then I think that, it's really about to click for derivatives to really start taking off in a way that, that we haven't seen. So.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how the space kind of grows over the next like 6 to 12 months, and even further out than that. And it's going to be interesting to see if, most of these protocols are going to be built on Ethereum or Solana or like a competing chain. But why did you guys choose?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, why did you guys choose to build on Solana over, say, Ethereum or something else?
Sure. Then, I think we probably get that question from people more than any other question.
Yeah.
And just to kind of take a step back, like when we were first thinking about some of the things that we wanted to solve with Hxro Network, we got a lot of our arms being twisted to build on Ethereum.
Yeah.
And we were pretty adamant about not doing it. And I think even at one point we were like, well, look, we want to set up to build Hxro Network on top of Solana, but like we'll still keep the figure out how to keep the protocols, utility tokens, like, in the Ethereum ecosystem. Like the way we were thinking through it was really like, it was definitely risky to kind of go, push all in on Solana at the time. But we made that choice, and, we kind of took a step back and looked at it. The ecosystem that's around it, and the teams that are involved with it, beyond the scope of the things that everybody talks about, kind of like the headline commercial bullet points of Solana of like 50,000 transactions per second. There's really no other base layer blockchain that can compare at this point. When you think about running a derivatives protocol, like in a way that's analogous to, in terms of like the speed requirements, that like maybe not today, but when you look out, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, like there's going to be a speed race here, because speed is an information asymmetry that exists in trading. And so block times are going to matter like heavily. And and then also like the amount of throughput that can be put through. So like if you think about like some of these headlines, like 50,000 transactions per second, 400 millisecond block times, the extremely low costs of transactions on Solana, like all these kind of speak very well to what are kind of like base requirements of running a a real live streaming market for for options. Because, and especially like you think about options, options aren't just about like creating like one strike line. Like you're not creating just like the December Bitcoin 50,000 call option.
Mhm.
Like you are creating an options chain, like serialized options that have a strike map that goes, that could go from 400,000 down to 5,000, and then duration that could go out for a year, And so when you think about all the quoting that needs to be done around that, and all the transactions that need to be put through, and then you need to be able to handle the kind of the payload that comes with that, like Solana really is the only blockchain that has shown that it has those capabilities. So from a headline perspective, that is, pretty clear. The thing that to me feels like less clear, and what is really, kind of needs to be magnified, is the fact that, like, if you think about the people that are around the Solana ecosystem, again, like Jump, Alameda,
Mhm.
CTC, Susquehanna, like all the people that are getting involved are like the key financial players from traditional finance who are now kind of, leaning heavily into a decentralized world. And also the engineers for Solana, like at its core, like the engineers that we work closely with are mostly ex-Citadel engineers, like all have traditional finance experience. They understand exchange, they understand matching engines, they understand margining, and they understand how how to look at risk parameters and just all the things. And then like, so it makes the problems that need to be solved, um, it it can happen so much more efficiently. Like you have a lot less education to give to
Mhm.
like a core engineer that you're working with, that's coming from, like that Hxro Network is working with from, for somebody from Solana, where it's like, oh, this guy actually is worked at a proprietary trading firm for a number of
Mhm.
years, or he was, at Citadel working on trade engines or algorithmic trading or something, like, whatever it is, like they all have those backgrounds. And really, I think Solana ecosystem as a whole really attracts that type of engineer, developer, and market participant. So it really is the perfect place. And I'm obviously it actually, like, I first learned about Solana from Sam Fried, and
Mhm.
it really opened our eyes to what was possible. And I really don't think we would be able to work at what's being built for Hxro Network without, if Solana wasn't here and wasn't at the point that it was in its own
Mhm.
evolution.
Yeah, definitely. I think Solana has really, because it's obvious by now, like Solana has, some of the best tech in crypto for layer ones. And I think that like a lot of these experts have been waiting for the opportunity to kind of jump into crypto and start building something, with massive scale. And
Mhm.
so I think that, now that Solana is really here and things are picking up, momentum is kind of going, it's really bringing in all those experts to, kind of amplify the ecosystem effect and really just grow it out.
Absolutely. It's really exciting to see. And it's not even just it's like, it's experts from like different types of, just different kind of subsegments of the market that are all like kind of requirements to making this scalable and move forward.
Mhm.
Like, for example, there's a fund that is involved with the network that has they just hired a guy who is like the head of futures and options for like a major investment bank.
Oh
And
yeah.
so like that as a resource is somebody that like is becoming knowledgeable of the Solana ecosystem, and like can, is working close with Hxro Network to help kind of solve some of these problems. Or it could be like things around like KYC. And
Mhm.
there's like, to have like somebody like Civic right now who has actually like built a KYC function to allow for, to actually KYC on chain, wallets. Like it opens up a lot that can happen. Again, like when you think about the kind of the traditional finance players that are crossing over, it's like that's one of the key elements they're going to look for. Most of them are not going to are just not going to touch a decentralized network that doesn't have some type of KYC wrapper around it. So
Yeah.
there's all these kind of different pieces and components that are coming together, and it's happening organically, and it's really cool to see. So
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, about Civic, Civic Pass, and being able to run KYC on chain, for these dexes and stuff, so that institutions can actually participate in DeFi a little bit. Because, yeah, like you said, there's just barriers that they don't necessarily want to cross. And so I'm hoping that
yeah,
this kind of move will definitely bring in more institutions.
I think people don't realize, like, uh, a large traditional player, like the amount of compliance and like scrutiny that they're under, and like
Mhm.
the amount of like regulators from, especially if you're global, like,
Yeah.
I remember having conversations with the CEO of one of the largest, prop firms on the planet, and like telling me, like, he's like, we have anywhere from 3 to 7 regulatory audits going on all year, every
Mhm.
year.
Yeah.
And so, like, imagine if they got sloppy for a second and said, oh, I'm just going to go like plug in and try out this market that effectively is like almost no different than like Pirate Bay, but doesn't have like
Yeah.
those types of illicit activities going on it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Where now I could, I may end up crossing a trade with a wallet that is being backed by a terrorist organization,
Yeah.
or funded by a terror. Like,
Yeah.
there's just all of these things that, like, it's just, there's so many angles that kind of have to be secured. And
Mhm.
it it really, to me, that's kind of where the rubber meets the road. Like, once KYC is really solved, and like, if you're not thinking about these types of things within the context of your own primitive, like, I just don't see, and not every primitive really needs that, but like, the fact that, like, if you think about that, Hxro Network really at the end of the day is a liquidity and risk engine, and let's say that it composes with Serum for order books, and then with Pith for data, and you
Mhm.
kind of put that whole ball of wax together, and now you basically have the base kind of software to spin up a derivatives market, whether it be futures or some type of vanilla option or exotic option.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so where does that compliance layer sit? And our thing is, like, the way that we're looking at it is that the more like direct regulatory, like consumer facing regulatory stuff has to definitely will end up existing at the application layer, but like at the base layer, at a minimum, like, it's still speculative, like, we don't know how different regulators are going to look at it, but
Mhm.
like, and that's definitely something that we're knee deep in working on, and approaching different regulators to, through their like innovation labs and things like that, to start kind of helping to start being a part of that discussion and figuring out ways to solve it. But what we know that, one thing that just won't fly is like the no KYC thing.
Yeah.
It's just not, it's a non-starter. It's a non-starter for us being involved, building this, let alone a non-starter for a very kind of one of the more preeminent trading firms on the planet, like very or many of them that we eventually want to see participate in this. And
Yeah.
again, just something that has to be there. So
Yeah, definitely. So let's jump back into Hxro Network. So let's talk about Sam and Theo. What can you tell me about these protocols and,
sure.
their key functionality in the network?
Yeah, so there's two that we're working on. So there's Sam, which is actually very specific to Paramutual, these kind of specialized markets that are Paramutual. They're Paramutual markets, and effectively what those are is, it's really like how the in the money is paid out. Like, it's where if you're basically, let's say you have a two-sided market, and instead of getting a price, like going in at like what they call like a double auction market, where
Mhm.
it's like the normal traditional market and order book that you see, like, it's just saying, like, okay, this is going to be higher or this is going to be lower by expiration. And there's some like t equals 0 start time, and then there's an end time. And um the instead of the funds from the position being put on being, basically where your P&L is gonna move, and then there's gonna be a winner and a loser. There's still a winner and a loser, but all of the assets in the pool are pooled together, which effectively is what Paramutual means. And then the side that is in the money will split the funds in the pool pro rata, and then the losing side basically has an option that expires at zero, expires worthless. And so we have that, that exists on Hxro, the centralized version of Hxro, which we built a couple of years ago, had some good traction on this, and really have found that the use case for that type of market can expands well beyond just the context of just trading in crypto assets, and has use case that expands. It really is like, it's almost endless, but we think about it like, okay, for like live in play sports, or on, obviously, like it could work for event contracts, like things that have outcomes that are, either A or B initially, which is what the protocol is being built. Like it's more for dual sided, but then eventually over time where you can kind of have more outcomes added to it, much like, kind of like take horse racing, for example, and say there's 10 horses in a race. Like Paramutual betting style is kind of how it's really how most wagering on horses happens. So we built this first because it is a little bit of more of like low hanging fruit, and is like a very good test case for us. And for SAM itself, and kind of the architecture of it. And then Theo is a very similar architecture, albeit a little more complex, because Theo is really solving for vanilla options initially, but then will be able to expand into exotic options. And exotic options are basically anything that is not standardized, which is like, i.e. like vanilla style options. Vanilla style options are kind of what you would see on Deribit or on the SIBO or things like that. And the exotic options are more things like maybe like what you see like on the Wix and Tix contracts, and on Hxro's, on Hxro's platform, where it's like a one-touch option or a barrier or an agent or a knockout. There's just like an endless different types that effectively Theo will be eventually built to handle. And so the basis for both protocols is really that you have a liquidity component, then you have a risk management component of it and then that risk management is really determined by in SAM, it's really determined by a group of what we call probability providers, whose job it is effectively to go into every event and say, this is the probability of A happening versus B happening, and at a regular interval, basically inject like an update of, they're saying like, this is our prediction of like, or this is based on our estimates, this is like this is where the market is priced in terms of outcome. And it takes the ensemble of that, and then the liquidity pool that is attached to the AMM. This is how it determines how it weights its position in each contract. And then there's some risk management layer over top of it, and then the liquidity pool. That's how the liquidity pool effectively can be injected into each contract, bootstrapping liquidity for those particular markets. Now that concept is very similar to what happens in Theo. In Theo, it just replaced the concept of a probability provider with a volatility surface provider. So instead of injecting a probability, you have a system where a group of will come in and they'll inject what their estimate at any given moment or at some interval of what a risk-free volatility surface for that particular asset is. And then the Theo system will take the ensemble of those and then say this is what Theo's estimate of of the zero of like the market's zero preference volatility surfaces, and then it has a pricing mechanism over top of it that will then put bids and offers that are backed by the liquidity pool out on the market, and then it has a full inventory management system that will, and this is kind of a really big advancement, that is that it gives it the ability to actually manage its own inventory for the liquidity pool. Like this was one thing that we saw in a lot of DeFi options that exist today, where it's like it kind of like a lot of the liquidity pools are set up to like be like what I would call like picking up nickels in front of a steamroller, where they're just it can act as good deep liquidity, and there's like a good mechanism for people to put their capital into the liquidity pool, but that liquidity pool has to wear risk, right? And when it wears risk, effectively it's always going to be on the other side of a market participant that has more information than it does. And over the course of time, if those risks aren't hedged out at a right, constantly, then eventually that liquidity pool will blow up. It's just the way these things work. Like it's like that's what picking up nickels in front of a steamroller means. Like it feels like you're making money, and then suddenly you don't, and when you don't, you lose a lot or everything. And so that's what this solves. It actually can autonomously manage its own inventory of options, understands how to like lean its options book, how to hedge it, how to use futures or perps to hedge the delta exposure in the book, and then actually manage a inventory of options with a liquidity pool behind it that is like, where that liquidity pool actually, it gives the liquidity pool the opportunity to act as much like a market, like a real market maker than anything else that we've seen that exists today. And so we think that solves a big, it's kind of like a really good kernel. It solves a big issue of like giving, kind of disintermediating the market making side of the market. But then we're also adding the ability, there will also be traditional market makers in there as well, just because that makes the market more robust. And obviously early on, especially like the Theo protocol, like the AMM will that being able to kind of handle the volume and flow that we're expecting to see in the market will be a lot more difficult if it's just doing it on its own. So a hybrid model where you have traditional market makers, so they can continue to conduct their business with the AMM being in there as well. And then we think that really sets the basis to have really good, deep, robust markets and then scale.
Yeah, man, that's really interesting. A lot of good info there. You brought up horse racing, so are we gonna get some Zedrun, some Zedrun betting markets going up anytime
I would
soon?
love to. Yeah, absolutely. Like I'd love to see. I don't understand why Zedrun isn't being built to Solana, but
I agree there.
it's so funny. I was just telling somebody that I think I was like literally like the third person in their Discord, and then like totally missed, like I never even got a horse. Like
Oh
I got so
yeah.
sidetracked with Hxro, but I was like, this thing is, they're doing something right. This is going in the right direction. And I just totally like bit the dust on it. But yeah, no, look at the idea is that, we definitely have a belief that as long as you have a good clean data source that the network says this is a viable oracle to be working from, there's going to come a day where there's kind of, we're taking a view where there's really just going to be a market on pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And then, and how the world gets their head around that concept is to be determined. But, part of building Hxro Network, much in the way that, that Serum is just an order book, or Pyth is really a data oracle, right? Like these are like, I look at like the, those two plus Hxro Network as like the three ingredients that you really need to then function that you'll end up needing to function a derivatives market. And you'll have your choice of saying like, do I want to make a futures market out of this? Do I want to make a vanilla options market out of this? Do I want to make a barrier option out of it? Do I want to make a digital out of it? And like, it'll all be there to do. And with those components there, it'll make it super easy. And I'm excited to see the level of creativity that'll go into what gets built on top of it over time.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be awesome. Whenever there's some sports data that we can throw in there as well. I mentioned to you before, betting on the UFC fights through something like Hxro Network would be awesome.
Absolutely. And look at it. And the beauty of it is like, okay, like let's say there's there's obviously tons of real-time data sources for like in play and stuff like that. And it's really just a function of like, can that data get to the network? Can it be delivered through, properly through an oracle? Yeah. Is it, whether it's Pyth or whether it's API 3 or Switchboard or whoever it may be over time, it may be different, kind of different markets, different market segments will come from different, data oracles, like who knows, like, but yeah, I think that and the beauty of it is that it's really for the ecosystem to ultimately determine. And it's not going to say that like, if you spin up a USC fight on Hxro Network, and for some type of options market for it, like, is that going to be allowed in every jurisdiction? And the answer is, probably not, right? But that's where the application layer comes in, where like this is, where you start to get into like other forms of the regulatory side that I think, that kind of that layer is also important. And it's like when we think about these things, and this is maybe like kind of another differentiator of Hxro Network, like again, like we're really thinking about all this like very much as like a B2B2C type of like ecosystem where you're going to have people that you're going to have participants that are going to come and plug in like directly to the network, like a trading team or a firm that's going to want to just like plug in directly through the API. But then you'll also have applications that are being built, and it could be an exchange that's plugging in, right? Or it could be somebody, some team of developers that wants to build a front end that is like specific to a particular jurisdiction, or focus on a particular type of like instrument or a particular type of data. Like maybe it's just they want to use it strictly for their sports, for their sports betting platform. Yeah. And or it's an exchange that wants to specifically focus on vanilla options on Bitcoin and other digital assets, like whatever it is. Like the idea is that there is that general architecture that's there, and then the ecosystem really can determine what gets built to it, or what gets what data can be applied to it, and then what type of market actually can come out of it. So
yeah. So let's see. What are you most excited about for Hxro Network, on the roadmap over the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months?
I mean, there's so much right now because it really is just like spinning up. We're just, imminently going to be putting out the first kind of public version of Theo protocol. And then there'll be staking to follow soon after that for the network. And then obviously we'll be opening up for governance and all those elements. And then I'm really most excited over everything, like just around seeing Theo evolve, because I think that ultimately it probably has the most disruptive properties and could have the most impact like for the long term. I think they both will. I think both protocols will, but there's so much more in my mind to just the kind of the fabric of the like the global financial system that exists, where the things that are being built for Theo can really reshape in a way that actually can be like regulatorily friendly, and can really reshape the way that options and like kind of and other derivatives exist, like in kind of the fabric of the financial, the financial system. And I'm really there's just, I think you're going to see so much really in the next 3 to 6 months that's going to spin up very quickly. And then things are going to be really off and running, and it's just going to be about, creating awareness and bringing more and more talented teams to the network. And then, again, I was talking about kind of the B2B to C layer of things is really getting some of those application layer operators into the network to start, putting out the liquidity and the products that come from that liquidity and risk engine up on their exchanges or up on their platforms, whatever those platforms may be, or tangential products that exist, whether it's structured products or things like that can come out of it. And then really driving that into like kind of the end consumer. And that's, like that for me, ultimately is where kind of like CFI and DeFi will meet. And that is where I think you really, really get like where you really start to see mass scaling. And the kernels of all that are going to be here inside of 6 months. And then where it goes from there, obviously very high expectations for it.
Yeah.
But I think the last thing I'll say on that is like 6 to 12 months exciting, but really it's like, where does this go in the next like 3 to 5 to 7 years for me? And we're looking at this. It's why like you don't see Hxro Network out like kind of doing the hype thing so often. It's like we're really focused on the problems that we're looking at solving are really designed. It's very ambitious, and like we're just looking to solve things for the long term. Like we want to create a sustainable system here. And so I think while a ton is going to happen over the next 6 to 12 months, that'll be very exciting and is really going to open the eyes of a lot of people within the crypto ecosystem. It's really like the next 3 years, 5 years of like, how does this start to merge with the traditional financial system? And like, we know it's not going to be a straight line. We know there's going to be obstacles along the way there's going to be great things that happen. There's going to be challenges, and that's just all part of the journey. So
yeah, a lot of really exciting stuff. Hxro Network is definitely one of those projects that I'm most excited about. I feel like you guys have a really solid team. You do have that expertise. You guys are looking at things from a long-term perspective. You're taking in the regulatory, stuff into consideration. So I think you guys are really doing good things over there and looking at it the right way.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So do you have any tips for builders kind of in the Solana ecosystem or even other ecosystems that are wanting to come and, just build?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, and I can say this like definitively because I've had the fortune of working very closely with like some of the key engineers at Solana recently.
Yeah.
And their style is really it's very unique, but it's incredible. And we've felt it just through like as new engineers have come onto to become part of the Hxro ecosystem, and very, very talented engineers. And like, these are very accomplished guys. Like they're either young and very smart and very eager, or they've been around for a long time and are, have come from traditional finance, very accomplished engineers. And then you get to Solana and you're like, okay, well, if I know Rust, then I'll figure out Solana. But what you really need to understand is that you need to learn Rust, and then you need to learn Solana. And Solana is not easy. It's not Solidity. And I'm not saying Solidity is easy by any means, but for a accomplished developer, it can get picked up very quickly.
Yeah.
But the the silver lining in that is when you do learn it, you can learn it. You actually have a skill. It actually is a bona fide edge. And when you can do it really well, you can start to build things at the, really at the primitive layer, like not just coming and building on top of Serum, for example, like which, you see a lot of projects do, but actually start building like something that sits side by side with Serum. Like we definitely took that, like that harder road. And, engineers that have come in, like spending 3-4 months, like just learning Solana. And the real way that I've seen the most success is just through trial and error. Like you have to get on it and you just have to start building on it. And like just pick a project, and it could be something really benign and easy, but just it can go a long way with you understanding like, okay, this is how you have to build on this, within this blockchain. And I mean, if you step back and think about it, it's not like there's an endless sea of incredibly like super competent Solana developers, like meaning like it's really a handful that have kind of gotten over the hump. And I think you hear like Toli's kind of coined the phrase, like you have to get in there and chew glass.
Yeah.
Like that is the most on point thing ever. Like you're chewing glass, you're walking on glass with bare feet, you are choking on glass, but like when you get through it, it really is a very, very, very powerful blockchain. And so I think like expect some upfront time to really learn it. And, for it to expand, it's not, again, it's like some engineers and some teams are going to come and want to build on top of the primitives that exist, which is like, there's a massive opportunity there. And again, it's like so early, but if like you're going to really build at the core, like I think you need to really expect like a learning curve to kind of exist before you go down that path. And so I would probably buy yourself, if you're a experienced Rust engineer, like buy yourself 3-4 extra months of like learning the entirety of the Solana infrastructure and system and how to build on it. And then once you do, like the things that you'll be able to spit out will be just well beyond what many others are capable of.
Yeah, those are some great tips. And I think, for developers and, just builders in general, just the amount of work that you have to do to actually learn, if Rust is a new language for you, and also, like you said, learning all about Solana, just going through those extra challenges and hurdles, really allows for great products to come out on the other end.
Absolutely.
And, you kind of bypass all of the people that are here just for like copy paste projects, or, these projects that are super simple yet have a ton of security holes. And so it's just one of those things, you got to go through the process, and we're still so early, so putting in that work and facing those challenges will be super rewarding.
That's it. You got to take a step back and just be like, we're early. Like don't let people push you into like, just like, I mean, look, you got to ship. Like that's the other thing too. It's like that's one of the most, and on Solana it's very difficult. Like you can talk to most Solana engineers and you'll see like 90% of things never get shipped even. They just like kind of give up on the project. But but you have to figure out like, but it's getting through over those first hurdles and like taking a step back and going, okay, like if I'm building something that is truly going to be transformative or really be like kind of something that can be very impactful to this ecosystem, maybe not now, but maybe in 2 years from now, like understand that you got a little time then. And like that 3 months out of the hopefully the 100 years that you spent on this earth is like, is nothing, right? It's not even a pinprick. And so you get that done. And then like the things that will come out of it is, I think you're going to see a lot of benefit when you get 12 months out, instead of like saying like, shit, I should have chewed glass like those first 3 months. Like now you're like needing to go back because the primitive that you were built on initially like because he just maybe wanted to take a little bit of an easier way out, or just wanted to get something to market fast. Like, you know, it's having its own issues, and now you have to go back and like kind of start from scratch again. So I think there's just different, you know, it's a different mentality. It's you definitely got to be willing to grind it out, and if you do it, I think the benefits are absolutely huge.
Yeah, and the great thing about the Solana ecosystem is literally everybody is here to help you. Like you can,
Oh
you
yeah,
know, mostly reach out to any team and they're happy to jump on a call and talk. You know, even the Solana folks like Anatoly and Raj, like they've been super receptive and easy to communicate with just over Twitter or wherever. But
absolutely. I think that's such an important piece. And like,
mhm.
like it's one thing that I love about Solana ecosystem. It is like everyone's having a good time. We like the kind of the people that are really involved in it, like they all know, we all have a clear picture of like what's going on in the world, right? Like
Yep.
it's like there's very little, there's you know there's very little by way of like infighting and bullshit.
Yeah.
There, you know, we nobody really just, you know, subscribes to like any real like tribalism.
Yep.
It's really so focused on just like how do we build things that actually matter. And you know, you see a very limited number of kind of like scammy feeling projects, and like the ones that are, you know, they get outed pretty quickly, and like
Yep.
it just, it's a really good clean palette to be working from, and it's such a powerful ecosystem. And like, and I feel like the Solana ecosystem has that long ball trajectory and perspective also,
Yeah.
right? Like you're building things that are where they're going to matter in 7 years from now, and 10 years from now, and 20 years from now. And it's like you can just see, you can even see it with like the way Tolly communicates with the community when they have issues, or like
Yeah.
why, like, you know, when they had the issue, you know, a few weeks ago after that, the stuff with Radium, like it was, you know, it was obviously very intense moments, but like if you kind of zoomed out for a minute and you're like, well, look at this thing's, you know, only like what, 3 years old.
Yeah.
And like you're it's just, this is part of the evolution of it. This blockchain is going to literally like change the fabric of so many aspects of our everyday lives in
Mhm.
10 years from now. So does like something that kind of went haywire for 3 days even matter? No, it needs to happen. It's like, that's part of the test. It's part of the experiment,
Yeah, you
right?
got to get through these growing pains initially. That way you don't deal with them down the road when it's way bigger.
What are you going to do when you have 500 million people on it because
Yeah.
like Visa's on it, or because PayPal or somebody's on it, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you're sharing that infrastructure with, you know, and that network with them, and like these are the things you don't want to have happen. And so that to me is like, it's actually opportunity too, right? It's opportunity
Mhm.
because it creates asymmetries of like, if you have a longer term view on these things, like how you think about the things that you're building, um, it it makes you breathe a little easier, and allows you to see the forest or the trees a lot clearer.
Yeah, man, I totally agree. This has been a really fun call. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think we're about to hit our limit on Zoom, but
Oh, great. All right.
so yeah, I was just gonna see, is there anything else that you want to chat about or tell, you know, the people in the audience?
No, I mean, you know, just, I think just, you know, probably make sure if you're not, follow, you know, at Hxro Network, on Twitter, or you can follow me. I'm at HXROBTC. I probably should make that HXROSOL at this point.
Mhm.
But yeah, and lots of big updates coming, and, you know, definitely going to get more involved around community awareness now that, you know, the early stages of our protocols are going to start coming public.
Mhm.
And the network's going to start spinning up, and the ecosystem is going to really start jamming here. So um, super exciting time, and super exciting time for, you know, for crypto, and for Hxro Network. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely leave all the links below in the description, and definitely be on the lookout for some content and stuff from Hero Network. But yeah,
Awesome.
thanks a lot, man. It's been a great conversation today.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll talk soon.
Yep. See you, man.
Bye bye.